It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Seriously ill and suffering from malnutrition. The children on the front line of the warnings of mass starvation in Gaza.
He is unable to hold his legs up, his arms up with it because he has no energy. He is unable to cry. He has no muscle because the muscle is being broken down for energy. So there's just skin and bones.
Tonight, Sir Keir Starmer calls out what he says unspeakable and indefensible suffering. And France's president says his country will recognise the state of Palestine. Also tonight, Donald Trump dons his hard hat as he deals with more questions over the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, whose former girlfriend is meeting senior administration officials. The doctors, hours from walking back out on strike, despite the public sector's biggest pay award. We assess the impact on patients. The star wrestler who became one of Donald Trump's most muscular supporters, Hulk Hogan, has died at the age of 71. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. It is images like those in the report you're about to see, which seem to have finally moved some Western leaders to action over the situation in Gaza. Children at a hospital, malnourished, but where there is still virtually no food to help them. Sir Keir Starmer said tonight the situation in Gaza is indefensible. President Macron confirmed what has been promised for months, that France will recognise Palestine as a state in September. But America's State Department struck a different tone, highlighting instead what it called looting by Hamas as a barrier to more aid being provided. Our international correspondent, John Sparks, has our first report tonight and a warning that it does include images of children in extreme distress.
If you think the sight of starvation is difficult to take, then consider the sound of a starving child. A 1-year-old who cries and whimpers for food. Her name is Sama. And there's Khalid, and there's Osama, and there's a 9-month-old called Siwa. In a hospital called Nasser, where they have virtually nothing to eat. Huda has lost half her body weight since March, when Israel shut the crossings into Gaza and imposed a blockade. And the 12-year-old knows she doesn't look well.
This is what happened to me. Can you help me travel abroad for treatment? I want to be like you. I'm a child. I want to play and be like you.
Her mother says Huda's needs are simple: fresh fruit and vegetables, fish, maybe a little meat. But she won't find it here. Aid agencies say mass starvation is spreading through Gaza.
Before, I used to look like this. The war changed me. Malnutrition has turned my hair yellow because I lack protein. You see here? This is how I was before the war. Like this.
3-year-old Amir was sitting in a tent when it was hit by projectiles. Medical staff were able to reassemble his intestines and stop the bleeding, but they can't feed him properly. Instead, he's given dextrose, a mixture of sugar and water which has no nutritional value.
They were all sitting in the tent, his mother, his father, his grandparents. Suddenly, 3 Israeli rockets hit them. 3 rockets. How could a child like Amir withstand that?
His aunt has come to visit, but Amir is effectively on his own. His mother and his siblings were killed in the strikes. His father no longer speaks.
His father is in a terrible state and won't accept the reality. What did these children do? Tell me, what was their crime?
These desperate scenes have not been caused by scarcity. There's plenty of food waiting at the crossings or held in warehouses within the enclave. These images of food aid were distributed by the Israelis. Their officials claim the UN is failing to distribute it. But the Israelis and the Americans have taken charge of food distribution. The UN's 400 aid centers have been shut. In their place, the UN tries to organize convoys, but it says it can't obtain the necessary permits and faces draconian restrictions on aid. An American doctor who spent 2 weeks at Nasser Hospital told us those restrictions include baby food.
When we actually brought baby formula in to Gaza, so I had an 85-pound check-in bag of donations, medical supplies, medications, and baby formula. Somehow my bag got through. Next mission that came in after us, their bags all got inspected and they physically threw out the baby formula, medications, and medical supplies in the trash. They threw them out in the trash. Their reasoning was that this is excess. You're bringing in excess when babies are literally starving.
I have baby Hassan here with his mother, and beautiful baby Hassan, he is 3 years old, yet only weighs 6 kg. At his age, he should be about 15 kg.
We see Dr. Hussein at Nasser Hospital examining a severely malnourished child.
He is unable to hold his legs up, his arms up with it because he has no energy. He is unable to cry. He has no muscle because the muscle is being broken down for energy. So there's just skin and bones.
Baby Hassan died 2 days after this video was recorded.
He needs special formula, he needs special feeds. And these feeds are literally miles away. They're literally right there at the border, but it's being blockaded by the forces. They're not in. So it's intentional deliberate starvation. And it's just so distressing that this is something man-made. This is a man-made starvation. This is a man-made crisis.
Sometimes food is made available at communal kitchens called tikia. First, you have to wait. And then you have to fight. For watery soup or some beans. And everybody here is desperate. Brawlers and breadwinners, nothing shields these children from the brutal facts of life. And many leave with nothing.
It's been 2 months since we've eaten bread. There's nothing to eat. I want life to go back to how it was. I want meat and flour to come in. I want the end of Turkey.
There's another way to seek sustenance at 4 distribution hubs run by US contractors. But they've been described by UN officials as sadistic death traps, with more than 1,000 killed. Young people deliberately targeted by Israeli soldiers, say doctors.
There's just mainly bullet wounds, and it's mainly to young boys, mainly children. I saw it from my own eyes.
You can see we're just exhausted. The traumas do not stop.
Gunshot, entry, exit?
Yeah.
How old is she?
13 years old.
13 years old.
Dr. Hussein recalls a 9-year-old boy who'd been shot in the head, the neck, and the abdomen.
I had to make that difficult decision to actually push ketamine, which is a pain and sedation medication, to give him a peaceful death. I was like, am I really doing this? Is this real life where I have to make a decision to end a 9-year-old boy's life because his injuries are so severe? And it haunts me. Like, I remember saying sorry as I was pushing the medication.
They look like scenes from a different century, a different era. Empty pots, empty bellies, the overwhelming sense of futility. Israeli officials say they have not identified the presence of starvation in Gaza, but on the streets, the very essence of life is ebbing away. John Sparks, Sky News.
Truly shocking scenes from inside Gaza there. 59,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. That number includes more than 1,000 kills since May trying to get food. In Gaza City, one aid group says 1 in 5 children are already malnourished. And this graph, based on analysis by our data and forensics team, goes some way towards explaining why. 3,000 trucks carrying food and water crossed into Gaza in 1 week in January. Compare that with the 100 trucks that entered the Strip last week. Our correspondent Lisa Holland reported from the border with Gaza earlier and talked about who the shortages are impacting.
I mean, everybody. It's no longer just the people of Gaza who these aid organisations are trying to serve, but also medical staff at the hospitals who are trying to save lives. Remember, there's a conflict still ongoing as well. Evacuation orders for tens of thousands of people in central Gaza around Deir al-Balah. So the journalists who are trying to get around weakened, our own teams, our colleagues, Gazans who are operating inside, really struggling to keep going because of a lack of food. Medical staff saying that they're not getting the kind of nutrition that they need in order to just keep functioning. So really a chronic picture has been painted by the aid organisations still operating inside Gaza and by the United Nations. Remember too, though, that Israel disputes this. It said aid is getting through. It says that there are millions of meals that have gone through for Palestinians. And in the words of a spokesperson on Sky News yesterday, saying there is no famine. But I mean, I think what we can safely say for sure, what is clear, is that people are very, very hungry whilst this war of words goes on about how aid can get over this very border at crossings, just like this one, Karim Shalom, from Israel into Gaza.
Tonight, Sir Keir Starmer has called the situation in Gaza a humanitarian catastrophe. Our political correspondent Serena Barker-Singh is in Downing Street for us tonight. And Serena, very strong words from the Prime Minister and an emergency call planned for tomorrow.
Exactly, quite a statement from Downing Street tonight and news of this emergency call immediately tomorrow, apparently. I'll just read the statement because it is quite strong words. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the suffering and starvation unfolding in Gaza is unspeakable and indefensible. While the situation has been grave for some, it has reached new depths and continues to worsen. We are witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe. He goes on to say, I will hold an emergency call with E3 partners tomorrow where we will discuss what we can do urgently to stop the killing and get people the food they desperately need while pulling together all the steps necessary to build a lasting peace. We all agree on the pressing need for Israel to change course and allow the aid that is desperately needed to enter Gaza without delay. Now, while they say they agree on all the steps to build a lasting peace, you have Emmanuel Macron tweeting tonight, stating that he will and France will recognise Palestinian statehood later on in the year at a UN summit in September. That feels like a bit of a moment. Now, we know there's a conference next week that Saudi Arabia and France are joint holding that the UK will attend, but I understood that they were going to discuss a two-state solution and not necessarily statehood. So this goes further. It puts number 10 at a slightly difficult position because they wanted to be in lockstep with their allies. They've told me tonight their position remains unchanged. They said Palestinian statehood is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people, but they want to see it as part of a deal and not a symbolic move.
Serena, thank you. The controversy that Donald Trump clearly wishes would go away continued to play out tonight, this time in a federal courthouse in Florida. Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted former girlfriend of paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, met senior figures there from the Department of Justice. Our US correspondent James Matthew is in Ayrshire tonight, and James, President Trump flies to Scotland tomorrow, a long way from the Florida courthouse. He'll be surely hoping to escape his troubles for at least a while over Jeffrey Epstein.
Hi, Gillian. Yeah, I think he very possibly will, hoping to stay under the radar for what is a private visit, largely over several days. He's going to his golf course in Turnberry, thereafter heading to his course in Aberdeen, opening a new course there. But he will be hoping that he can leave behind him the story that he can't escape, this business of Jeffrey Epstein and his association with him and his refusal to release the Epstein files. We've seen him out today, Gillian, appropriately wearing a hard hat. He was at the Federal Reserve Bank. That's a story for Trump because he has spoken about the sacking of its chair of the federal bank. He's pulled back from that somewhat in his comments today. But in terms of the action on the Epstein affair, that's taken place, as you say, in a federal courthouse in Tallahassee. Ghislaine Maxwell and lawyers sitting down with the Deputy Attorney General, he says, so that he can glean information relevant to the whole Epstein affair, pass that on to the FBI. There are difficulties with that because of Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction, Gillian. The fact that she is seeking a pardon, that's in the gift of the president. The fact that she is trying to engineer an appeal through the Supreme Court. And of course, that is weighted with judges appointed by Donald Trump. So that invites skepticism. So too does the fact that a lawyer she sat down with within the past few hours was Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's former private lawyer, the man who sat beside him through his court cases and the man elevated with Trump's endorsement. So many people putting two and two together and concluding that there is a cover-up, an extended cover-up that continues. There's also the question, Gillian, being asked by some, and it's fair, I think, why go to Ghislaine Maxwell as a priority and why not ask questions of the abuse victims who may have more pertinent and relevant information to the whole investigation, the wider investigation.
James, thank you very much for the moment. Well, a year ago, Donald Trump was being endorsed by one of the biggest, quite literally, stars of American entertainment and sport. Hulk Hogan and his 6'7" frame launched America's WWF wrestling, now known as WWE, into the global consciousness. The wrestler, real name Terry Bollea, died today at the age of 71. He suffered a cardiac arrest. President Trump on social media said Hulk Hogan was strong, tough and smart and would be greatly missed. At least 12 people have been killed in fighting along the border between Thailand and Cambodia. It's been an area under dispute for more than a century, but tensions were inflamed again recently after the leaking of a phone call between Thailand's then Prime Minister and Cambodia's former leader. The current tensions broke out near the ancient Thamuen Thom Temple along the border of Thailand's Surin province and Cambodia's Oda Mianche province. Clashes have occurred in multiple areas along the border. Our correspondent Cordelia Lynch has this report from Si Sa Ket in northeastern Thailand.
It's an old border dispute with a deadly new inflection point. Cambodia and Thailand both accusing each other of striking first. The worst hostilities between these neighbours in more than a decade. This is Si Sa Ket province in northeastern Thailand. The burning aftermath of a rocket that hit a petrol station and shop. Civilians caught in the crossfire of politics. Komsan lost his wife, son and daughter.
I was in the car when it happened. My wife and children were inside the store. I heard an explosion nearby. I couldn't think of anything. I just ran to find my children and wife. But I only found one.
It was his 15-year-old daughter. His wife and son died in each other's arms.
I couldn't see them until they put the fire out. Then a firefighter told me there's a mother sitting hugging a child. They were all burnt.
How do you feel towards the Cambodian government now?
If you ask me, it's not right. Why should innocent people be the ones to suffer? This is meant to be a military battle. This isn't the place to attack.
Tensions started to rise in May when a Cambodian soldier died in a border skirmish. It then escalated in the past week when 2 Thai soldiers lost their legs in landmine blasts. Neither side seem willing yet to take an off-ramp.
We are protecting ourselves and the sovereignty of our nation. This is the main point of this matter. We cannot accept any invasion or violation of our national sovereignty.
Cambodia's use of armed force is because it has no choice but to defend its territory against Thai threats.
It is more than just saber-rattling, but these 2 nations have walked away from these moments before.
The sense, the hope is that this will not be going towards all-out war, that nobody wants that. But we have seen trade between the 2 countries break down. And of course, with this comes the greater risk of more military action.
The test will be whether 2 countries being influenced by 2 strong men on the sidelines can find the strength to pull back, and quickly. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News in northeastern Thailand.
One patient we spoke to today had this pithy view of the resident doctor's strike. Not everything in life is give me when I want it. That view is, it seems, shared by the government, with ministers making clear they won't increase this year's pay offer. Caught in the middle, hospitals and their patients, as our health correspondent Ashish Joshi reports.
John, we've had the results back from the CT scan and everything's clear.
John is 88. He's an RAF veteran. He was brought here to the Royal Berkshire Hospital after suffering a nasty fall in his garden. It happened just as the hospital was preparing for its resident doctors to go on strike.
I was in the RAF for 30 years and the military were very loyal. We weren't able to strike. We went and did our duties where the Crown sent us.
Do you have any sympathy for resident doctors and the industrial action they're taking?
Not everything in life is give me when I want it. They are well-respected people of the community, and by doing this action, my feeling is that they're losing the respect of the community, and that is a terrible thing.
The walkout will have a wide-ranging disruptive impact on NHS services across the country. They come after resident doctors, then known as junior doctors, took part in 11 separate strikes over pay between 2023 and 2024, leading to hundreds of thousands of cancelled appointments.
We know mornings are better, we know that evenings are difficult, we know that nights are really difficult. So it is unpredictable, but we know that next week there'll be 5 days where we have 400 to 500 patients every day, and we'll need to have to find staff to meet that need.
The British Medical Association says resident doctor wages remain around 20% lower in real terms than in 2008 and are demanding pay restoration. The public is being advised to continue coming forward for care while the industrial action is going on.
The last period of industrial action, during that particular period, we cancelled over 500 patients who were coming in for an outpatient consultation, over 50 treatments. This time we're really trying to hold fast in terms of cancelling patients.
The BMA says that approach is in danger of stretching staff too thinly and could put patients at risk.
We need to look at what's happening on non-strike days and non-strike weeks. We have millions of appointments being cancelled because there isn't the staff are burnt out and staff are leaving.
The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says more pay isn't on the table, but he is willing to discuss other issues around working conditions. For now, patients like John will hope that the impact of these strikes on the NHS won't affect their treatment. Ashish Joshi, Sky News, at the Royal Berkshire Hospital.
The UK has signed a landmark trade deal with India, the largest agreement Britain has secured since leaving the European Union. Sir Keir Starmer hailed it as an historic day for the 2 countries as he hosted India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Chequers. Protesters marched tonight from the Bell Hotel in Epping, which has been the scene of a series of demonstrations after an asylum seeker was charged with sexual assault to the local council office. Their Epping Forest Council voted unanimously to close the hotel, which had housed the asylum seekers. Labour's former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and the independent MP, Zara Sultana, have launched a new left-wing party. It doesn't formally have a name, though supporters online are being directed to a website called Your Party. Mr Corbyn denied the launch had been messy and criticised the other party's messages.
Reform only offer a message of division and blame. All they do is say that every social problem in our society is somehow or other the fault of extremely vulnerable minorities. They are a dangerously divisive force in our society. What we're offering instead is to bring people together so we collectively face the issues of poverty, the issues of bad housing, the issues of underfunded education. So we face those issues together.
One of the headaches Labour has already faced from its left flank is the rebellion over welfare, which forced the government to back down on £5 billion of planned cuts. Those cuts came after the Prime Minister said Britain would increase spending on defence, signalling the end of the so-called peace dividend, decades after the end of the Cold War. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has been looking at the new pressures on government spending.
Welfare versus warfare. For decades, there was a clear winner. As the Cold War ended, successive governments banked the so-called peace dividend, running down their armies to invest money in the welfare state instead, until war visited the edges of Europe once more and everything changed. Our Prime Minister, like other Western leaders, is facing up to a new reality that the era of peace is over. We're on a war footing and Europe must rearm. That's why the debate over welfare versus warfare is much more than just about difficult choices. It's about a much more profound debate over a radically changing world and what the essence of leadership really is, because the duty of any Prime Minister, first and foremost, is to defend the realm. That requires a shift not just from government, but from the public too. And whilst 49% of people recognise defence spending needs to increase, 53% don't want this to come out of other areas of public spending. And they definitely don't want to pay more tax. But without real economic growth, the government has to make choices. In recent weeks, it's been trying to reform welfare to garner billions of savings.
The ayes to the right, 335. The noes to the left, 260.
Only to fold in the face of opposition from Labour MPs, the government dropping £5 billion of welfare cuts to avoid a potentially devastating Commons defeat. What did you think when you initially heard the government were trying to reduce the bill a bit or slow the growth of the bill?
Well, I was cheering them on. The reason that the welfare bill effectively collapsed was because it was made on the basis of fiscal arguments that, the Chancellor needed to find £5 billion. I think we need to make the moral argument that the way our welfare system works at the moment is immoral, frankly.
Were you very frustrated when the government basically pulled all the PIP reform?
I was massively frustrated, massively disappointed for two reasons. First of all, because it's terrible for people who are currently being trapped on welfare. But secondly, because the risk is that the consequence of that is that we get trapped in a doom loop of ever higher taxes and ever lower growth.
That's the dilemma the PM's now facing as he weighs up tax rises in the autumn. Do you think that the challenge he's got, and this is playing out with the welfare argument that they've had, is that the party's instinct, if not the leadership's, is to prioritise welfare over warfare?
Look, I think it's impossible not to give Keir Starmer credit for what he's done in the international stage. When Zelensky was kiboshed in the White House, Keir leapt to his defence. Keir has engaged with President Trump in a way that no other leader in the world has been able to. And so much of the time that he's spent with Trump, he hasn't spent with Labour members of Parliament. And there's a playoff there, and he's done the right thing in engaging with Trump, because that is strategic. No Labour politician comes into politics to cut welfare, schools or other budgets, but on the basis that defence is non-negotiable. Everything else, unfortunately, may face those cuts.
So for you, if it came to welfare versus warfare, you're clear where the money needs to go?
I think President Putin gives us no choice.
But the problem Sir Keir Starmer has is that many of his MPs don't want to make that choice. They want more spending on warfare and welfare, even as the economy slows. And so now the government finds itself in an unenvious position of having committed more money to defence spending, now having an unexpected hole in its public finances after MPs rejected cuts to the welfare budget. Now the conversation is moving instead to tax rises. But that just delays a problem unresolved, which is how does a government begin to spend billions more on defence whilst also trying to maintain a welfare state in a way that the public have got used to? Without real economic growth to help pay for public services, the government will have to make a choice and warfare will win out. What's less clear is how the Prime Minister manages to take his party and the people with him. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
The head of the FA has told Sky News his organisation would consider boycotting social media after racial abuse directed at England star Jess Carter. England play Spain in the final of the European Championships on Sunday, and the FA chief executive was speaking to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris.
It's difficult in that you're angry that in this day and age that's still happening, and obviously our view is that social media companies need to do more. They need to prevent this happening. They need to find ways to take it down quicker, and then they need to work with us and the authorities to make sure that we're prosecuting people for what are effectively hate crimes.
I've asked X and Meta for comment. They've not got back to me now for days. Have you had any response from any social media firms?
No, we haven't. And I think our general perspective is that those companies have really avoided the responsibility for this over the last few years that they should be taking.
Would you consider a social media boycott as the FA?
Yeah, we'd absolutely consider anything that we felt would help.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and Belfast Telegraph columnist Alison Morris. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this call on the front of the Mirror over what it calls the catastrophe in Gaza. Its headline, Britain must do more. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.